Hello, everyone. Welcome to another video for Horizontes Project. My name is Armando Minjarez. I am the director and curator for the project. And today we are joined by Wichita City Councilman and Vice Mayor Brandon Johnson. Thank you, Vice Mayor Johnson, for joining us in this conversation. We're excited to have you on. We are doing a series of videos from different community leaders and artists and people that work with us through the whole project to get a little deeper into their inspiration behind the art that was created for the project in the neighborhoods, to get into the history that we have in these beautiful neighborhoods and think about and talk about what's happening in the future, what's happening right now, what can we expect, and especially with some of the catalyst projects, right? We focus a lot on the Dunbar Theater and the Nomar Theater, both as catalysts for development and investment. And it's exciting to see some of the things that are happening now. So anyway, welcome and thank you for joining us today in this conversation. And yeah, just give us a quick intro. Who are you?
Well, thank you, Armando, for even having me on this and having a discussion. I always like talking about this type of stuff. So real quick, I'm Brandon Johnson, served District 1 on the City Council and current Vice Mayor for 2021. Got elected in 2017, and it has been 4 years already, and hopefully another 4 years here pretty soon. But I've always enjoyed loving it, working in the community. And also working with you on a few things as well, and trying to bridge together our communities, Black and Brown, and address the issues that systemically impact our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And as you know, Horizontes, one of the main goals of the project is really to start the conversation about what does it look like to have Black and Brown solidarity, right? Often we focus on the external divisions that we have directed to our communities, which are important to address. But very seldom do we actually look inward into the barriers that we have internally, the prejudices that we hold, and how those things impact our everyday life and our ability to really continue to change and transform our neighborhoods for the betterment of everybody. Right, in looking at Northeast Wichita and the North End, these two historic neighborhoods, there's been a division line, right? That it's both visual, geographic, but also more emotional, perhaps. There's the train tracks that go across the neighborhoods, and historically we've been segregated, right? On the west side, you have the mostly Mexican American community, and we got some Southeast Asian communities. And on the east side of the tracks, you have the primarily African American community. The reality is today is that we're all everywhere, right? We're all over the city, and certainly in those neighborhoods, there's a more close knit community. People are living in both neighborhoods, right? The division is not, at least in terms of where people are living, is not delineated by those train tracks, but we still have a lot of work to do, certainly, to continue to have solidarity and support each other's work. Part of that legacy in those neighborhoods, it's redlining. To define it for those that are watching the video, it's essentially a discriminatory practice by banks and insurance companies that would refuse or limit loans, mortgages, and insurance within specific neighborhoods. Typically, historically, inner city neighborhoods that were inhabited primarily by African Americans and other people of color. And I mean, this goes back to the 30s, right? Back in the 1930s, early 1930s, there was a housing shortage, and the federal government began a program to explicitly design to increase housing stock in the United States. And it was by design also encouraging segregation efforts. The government's efforts were designed to provide housing primarily to white residents, middle class, lower middle class white families, and African Americans and other people of color were left out, right, of these new suburban communities. And they were pushed into what is now known as the inner cities. in different inner city housing projects. The Federal Housing Administration, or the FHA as it's known often, established in 1934, I believe, further desegregation effort. And the federal government was subsidizing builders to create this mass subdivisions for white people, right? And there were covenants that were part of these that explicitly excluded African Americans. And so we have the legacy of that still with us today, right? It's really defined how some neighborhoods have continued to develop in inner cities. It's defined access to different resources. And it gave birth to what we now know as suburbia, right? The suburban neighborhoods that we know today. Wichita certainly was highly segregated. Some people argue that it still is segregated. But tell us about, from your perspective as one, a resident of Wichita, right? You've been in this place for a long time. You've been involved pretty deeply in the Northeast community for a long time. And now you represent the people from those neighborhoods in city council. Tell us from your perspective, what's some of the legacy of desegregation practices, of redlining here in Wichita, how it's defined those neighborhoods, and how is that guiding governance for you today? What's happening today to maybe right some of those wrongs?
Yeah, that was a great foundation. I always refer to it as government sanctioned discrimination, and it still happens today in different forms. So here in Wichita, I believe they say Wichita was 80% redlined. If you look at the map, there's one publicly available from 1937.
I can pull it up.
Yeah. So the Reverend Dr. Michael Waters from Texas came to Wichita, and he kind of gave a presentation that was eye-opening, but it was true for Wichita. And I challenge folks to look around the country. And he said that if you look at these historically redlined areas and cities, then today they are either the most gentrified part of the city or they're still poor. So when you look at the Wichita map, you see the downtown corridor. That was historically where Black Wichitans were. Today, it's all government center, businesses, the bigger buildings, the office space, highly valuable properties. It's the most gentrified part. And when you get back into the north end, northeast Wichita, south Wichita, those areas are still poor. So his analysis is correct here in Wichita. And what that means is, at least for me on the elected side, even as an activist, I would always hear government developers don't care about us. It's the inner city. It's us versus them. You saw poor infrastructure, streets weren't as good, all of those types of things. And that was what I kind of ran to look at. How can we address that and do differently? But it was true. The inner city didn't get that type of investment in the things that we needed. The neighborhood roads were deteriorating. The arterials were kind of getting done piecemeal. And again, it goes back to, this was an area of our city that really wasn't cared about. It wasn't valued. You didn't see that in East-West Wichita, which was suburbia, and that was where the expansion happened. And Wichita had a long history, really up until recently, of just trying to build new, going farther east, farther west. One of the things I don't support is doing that. We need to take care of our inner core, reestablish our centralized area, which to me is parts of District 1, 3, 4, and 6. And we really need to put a lot of focus there. Right now, the city's looking at some things. I really think more neighborhood involvement should be a part of this stuff when it comes to places for people, which is looking to build density in neighborhoods, the affordable housing stock, some duplexes, some triplexes. Not the biggest fan of that. I like home ownership and single family homes, but we've got to find the funding to do that. So working with partners like Habitat, Mennonite Housing, Power CDC, they've been able to help build homes on some of these empty lots. But we also have housing stock that has a value of $25,000 or $30,000. So when you build a brand new $160,000 house next to one of those, you don't get the real value for the house that you want. And then if you do it too much and you don't involve the neighborhood, you can push people out, poor people who really don't deserve to be pushed out, but they do deserve quality housing. So it's a balance there. That's something that we've been talking about quite a bit, trying to find more dollars for that. And honestly, as much as possible, as we look at increasing our affordable housing, I've been looking for funding to help repair the housing that's already there. So if there's a lady who's either disabled or a guy who's, 65 or so, can't really make additional income on a fixed income, what can we do to provide them abilities to get new siding, windows, doors, roofs, sidewalks, driveways, to make sure their properties, they can still get the value for what they purchased, although they can't make more money to take care of it. That's a real issue. The other thing is the slumlords in the area. Again, as you think historically, these areas aren't valued. So you have people who will just get poor housing, slap some paint on it, or, a little bit just to make it look like it's decent. You get in there for a couple of days and you see you've got holes that expose you to outside. You've got rodents coming in. That's a real thing. And we've got to do something about that. But it seems that we think, or not we, but some think we're all equal now. And so there shouldn't be any type of law or ability to address those slumlords because, hey, you can get out of that house and go buy another one or go live somewhere else. And that's not true. Poor people don't always have options like that, or they get priced out of quality housing that somebody fixed up because they think somebody poor won't value it. So it's a lot going on. That's probably something I could talk about for a couple hours because it's frustrating to find that you see historically all these decisions were made that impact these issues, but at the same time, then there's nothing else that you can do about it because state law protects folks, or people think that the problem's gone and it's not.
Right, absolutely. So thinking about what are some of the opportunities that are in these neighborhoods right now? There's a history of Cleveland Street, right, being this economic hub for the Black community in Wichita. And for different reasons, between desegregation and infrastructure that was built, that died out over time, but there's still certain historic pieces like the Dunbar Theater that it's recently received some more attention and funding for its renovation. If we contrast it with the North End, we have a similar story, except that we've had an influx of immigrants in the last 20 years in the North End that it's really also brought entrepreneurship and different stores and businesses. So that's if there's a difference in the neighborhoods that I've seen is that, right? The North End has benefited from the influx of migrants, whereas in Northeast, we don't quite have the same thing happening. So how is the city and other maybe groups that you're partnered with addressing some of those issues, and what can we look for? And what has happened too, right? Some things have been happening. So what's happened? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, we've been making some progress. I talk about it, but I always give the caveat, it's not enough. So infrastructure wise, 135 was built during urban renewal, which kind of killed the whole Black business community over there. And it's still there. You can see how that community is separated. And then you see all the low income housing on either side of 135. Some of the good things, I put a lot of focus on the Dunbar area. One of my goals was to make sure the area uplifted as we supported those trying to fundraise and get the theater going. We've been able to restructure one of their contracts with the federal government. So now it's a 4-phase plan. They're in phase 1 and they're actually starting construction to make it a initial community center as they continue to raise funds and activate that space. The hope for that area is filling in some of the empty lots with more housing and then trying to sprinkle in some local business, preferably Black and brown owned and operated in the area, and make that a business arts district, which I think would be very dope over there and provide a lot of opportunity for a lot of folks. On the public side, so I've really been pushing hard for McAdams Park. We were able to save the pool over there, rename it for Charles McAfee, who's a world-renowned architect, actually helped design the 1996 Olympic Stadium in Atlanta. So everyone knows who he is. We renamed the pool for him, invested about $2 million into that. Council approved the latest investment thanks to Fidelity Bank. We'll be putting $8 million into that rec center, turning it into the Carl G. Burrow Community Center. So trying to keep up, the promises I made about revitalizing that area. I've been talking with Black and brown developers about coming into the Dunbar Arts Business District to see what we can do as far as housing stock and other small businesses. So that part's been really good. Not getting all the incentives I want to see because, again, historical decisions have made it so, I don't want to say poor, but the value, I guess, over there and lack of businesses won't allow for something like a star bond to be used to help develop that area. So we got to kind of piecemeal it together as much as possible, moving in a unified front to do that. But really, it's reaching out to local investors to see what we can do to help out. And then, if anything, using city infrastructure work to happen. So we've got those roads over there resurfaced. Hopefully we can get some other infrastructure projects going to make sure that area has the quality that it deserves. Opportunity zones nationally or federally was a failure. We did try to make sure that area was highlighted in an opportunity zone. I don't fully trust that now because it could be a gentrifier tool, but we are looking at other ways to work with that if we can get some developers of color to understand how we can bring the community to be a part of it. Maybe we can use that still, but also looking at some state incentives in the area and potential investment to try to make sure we get that going. I think if we can, we'll change that neighborhood back. And it takes a partnership. I know there's some good stuff going on the north end. There's some investment coming into Nomar. And I think one of the areas surrounding it, not enough probably in housing like I wanted to see over there, but again, if we can get a few steps going and maybe some things to start looking better and people feel better about making some investments over there, maybe that'll change. But I think it's all local. We'll need local people doing it.
Right. And so far, my sense of it is that there's been a lot of local investment into those neighborhoods, right? Private businesses stepping up, local philanthropic, right? People, philanthropists that are stepping up too and really taking ownership of some of these areas. And even with my position now at the Wichita State University, there's an effort to and reaching out to the youth in both neighborhoods and really encourage them to pursue a college degree and kind of think about a different future for themselves. And often some of these things take a long time, right? Unfortunately, the activist in me really wants things to change much rapidly. But there's different strategies to go about it, and a lot of them work together. One of the ones that I personally, have deployed as an artist is it's the role of art and shaping public discourse and really engaging people meaningfully in a conversation about their surroundings. So I'm curious from your perspective, what has it meant to you to see public art that reflects people of color, Black bodies and brown bodies, painted and depicted in buildings in a positive light? I know that for a long time, a lot of the public art in the city really did not reflect the diversity that we have here. So we really wanted to ensure that the artists that were creating the artwork and the art itself was reflective of those neighborhoods. And we've seen a lot more happening, right? Some of these artists have really taken off doing their own work. But what has it meant to you as a Black man to see art that reflects your experience and who you are?
Yeah. So for me, it's a little different. I'm really bad about taking it in the moment. But the moments I do take in are when this whole thing started. I can't remember what year that was. You and I talked about this, but going off of the grain elevator, going off of 13th on that overpass with the train. Yeah. So I began to just take notice of people of color who resemble whatever the image is. So the one on the overpass, I think, is two young Latino women, 2 or 3. And I would see Latino folks just kind of pause when I would drive by, staring at the artwork. That's not something that happened before. It was just a white canvas. So there was nothing there. But the gaze was not like you see in other parts of the town. It was like they see themselves in the image. The grain elevator, that was something I would see pictures on Facebook all the time from so many people going over there just to take a picture of it and say, look, this is something that looks like me. Then we did the artwork over at the Antoine Carr basketball courts.
Mm-hmm.
And although there's no image, everyone saw Black artists out there making that happen. The volunteers that came were all races, but most of them were Black folks that followed these Black artists to come out there and say, hey, I did this little piece of the corner. Seeing that on 9th Street, seeing the mural up over at Evergreen, I've just been seeing more people really take it in. And that was one of the things I wanted to see when I ran for office. Honestly, like, I believe in embracing our differences. So where we are segregated in the city, if there's, back on the south side of town, there's a lot of our Asian brothers and sisters out there. Love to see some Filipino art or some Vietnamese art out there. In the north end, love to see Latino art. And Northeast Wichita, we're actually starting to become more blended. So seeing some Latino art, seeing some Black art, Black faces, brown faces, it's great to see how people react to it. We just got the mural over at Maya Angelou Library approved. I've for years been arguing that library was named after Maya Angelou, but there was no image of Maya Angelou except for a bronze plaque on the inside. Now her face and a quote from one of her poems is just plastered over the outside in vibrant colors. And I see people all the time slowing down now, like, what is that? Mm-hmm. So you begin to see it over, and you have these different cultural hubs of art. It's beautiful to see how people react to it. I think when I get out of office, I'll take it in more. But what I do appreciate is seeing the kids that go up and just look and stare at it. They see themselves in that artwork. It really makes, I think, our communities feel more like community, because now the things in our community are reflective of us. We get to learn more from it. I think art is one of the best ways to do that. Outside of food. And I think that's what you and I were talking about. So, I mean, between all of those different efforts right now, I think it's great. And I know our young people really love it, because I always hear it or I see them taking pictures there. You saw people going to the Antoine Carr courts and doing the selfies, trying to catch that. So that part's been great.
Right. And I agree. I've heard different stories from the artists, really hearing from students, that they work with, or youth, and talking about what it means to them to see themselves reflected on these. And I think it's also really important that it's not just the artwork, right, that is reflecting who we are, but also that the artwork is being created by the people that is being depicted. That's been, for me personally, it's been a big piece of the puzzle. Is that as an artist and a creative, I want also local artists to have the same visibility and opportunities, right? It's not just enough to have visibility. Visibility is important, but it has its limitations, right? If there's no exchange in power and access, then visibility can only get us so far. So to see artists really become more competitive and able to create in this town, it means a lot, right? It's I'm thinking right now about the future and new projects. There's an exciting project happening downtown that is going to really memorialize the sit-in that happened, that goes back to the civil rights era. There's so many historic moments like that in Kansas that have been not celebrated for a long time. So it's exciting to see that there's going to be a park that memorializes this moment in history that catalyzed truly a national movement. Very few people know, right, that sitting there was a catalyst for what we read in history books in high school, and to give it its due place and to honor those people there is really exciting to see.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that project?
The big thing, though, I think that, and you really helped start it, is paying these artists. It wasn't so much just come out here and show us, what you can do, but actually paying them what they're worth. And that was one of the big disadvantages I saw with Black and brown artists, where their value wasn't worth getting paid. Everybody wanted to see the final product, but not pay them for it. So, I mean, paying them equitably, I think, has been good. And we've been seeing them actually start getting paid. I think there's still some gaps there, but at least the trend has started. At least there's value now, and they're seen in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're coming here to we're running out of time, coming to an end. What are some final things that you can tell us? What is something that you're working on that is that has you really excited here in the city?
Honestly, the Brewer Center, it's not enough just to have gyms. I wanted opportunity, and I wanted folks to be able to see something brand new, worth a lot in our community, in a poor neighborhood, and be able to come in there and have your life change. There's a full commercial kitchen that's going to go in there. If you know how to cook and, or you don't, maybe you just love to eat, you can go in there and learn how to cook something, maybe start your own business. Art, technology, having some of our bigger business community be in there. So if you know how to code and it's just something you do as a hobby, here's a job that can pay you 6 figures doing the same thing you're doing right now. So that's really exciting, pushing more of artistic opportunities because I want to see that. And honestly, affordable housing. I mean, that's one of the things, my barometer. So I think some people see my term in office a little different than me. My barometer is not how many people like me. It's this one guy I met in 2015 who pointed to this unpaved road. He named off 6 presidents, named off 4 mayors, and said this road isn't paved. And these houses still look like they do right now. That's my barometer. And until I can change that, I have to keep fighting. So right now, some of that's changed in some areas, but the actual street he's talking about still isn't paved. I've been bugging folks about that for a while because for me, that will be some real success. So if we can get these poor neighborhoods, some affordable housing in there, resources to people to get their homes fixed up. I hate to see people who work their whole life for a house that isn't worth a whole lot now, and it's not worth it to hand down to their relatives because I have to approve demolishing houses sometimes. I want to see these houses get back up to what they could be something that's worth handing down, and really make our neighborhoods more viable. And until we can do that, I still have a lot of work to do in addressing the food deserts. We've got stores coming out. We've got to get more local entrepreneurs in there. So I'm excited about the opportunity of change, but I just know it's a lot more work and my time is limited. So that's the focus, and hopefully we can see some movement in addition to all the good stuff we're doing, not to be doom and gloom, but it's a lot of good stuff happening. But I really want to see those substantive foundational changes that sets us up for success in the future.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for carving some time out from your very busy schedule to talk with us. Again, we are finally, getting back to these conversations. It was a long time away in the last 18 months, but here we are talking with all of you again, and excited to get this information out to whoever's going to see these videos, right? And I know that some of our local students will get to see this, and I'm glad that they get to hear about some of the history in this city and some of the things that are taking place to continue to move us forward. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, and good luck in your campaign.
Yeah, thank you. Always good to talk to you. We still got more work to do.